Amazing unexpected reveal, single dad's touching journey with a runaway millionaire heiress. Jake wiped the grease from his hands, the sound of clanking tools echoing through the dimly lit garage. His mind drifted to Ben, his teenage son, who often sat alone in his room, drowning in expectations. A nagging tension pulled at Jake's chest. He worked long hours, trying to provide, but was it enough? Memories of Ben's high scores and solemn expressions haunted him. The boy was a genius, but he wore the weight of potential like a chain around his neck. Jake felt the relentless cycle of worry. Was he pushing too hard or not enough? Every time he watched Ben retreat into that shell, it sent prickles of doubt coursing through his veins. The familiar whine of a passing car snapped Jake back to his reality. His garage was a sanctuary from the world, but it was a world filled with its own set of problems: the debt from bills, the choices weighing on Ben's shoulders. How could he instill values of hard work in his son without stifling his spirit? As he straightened up from adjusting the engine, the door swung open with a creak. A young woman stepped in, her eyes a vibrant mix of curiosity and desperation. "Can you help me?" she asked, the quiver in her voice catching him off guard. Jake raised an eyebrow, sensing a twist of tension knotting his stomach. This moment felt like an obstacle layered on top of his already staggering burden. Lily was her name, it turned out. Her grace contradicted a sense of wildness, and as they spoke, her presence instantly stirred an odd cocktail of emotions in Jake: concern mingling with intrigue. She seemed out of place, straight from a different world, a stark contrast to the oil-stained sanctuary Jake had built for himself and Ben. The longer they communicated, the more Jake's instincts screamed caution. Later, as she and Ben began to exchange ideas, their laughter bounced off the walls, sparking something within his son that had lain dormant for far too long. Ben painted stories through art with Lily's encouragement, and watched her in wonder as she confidently blended colors, providing a glimpse of a life he yearned for but feared could never be. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but as they embraced this blissful escapade, a darkness began to linger around them. News of Lily's absence fluttered ominously into their lives like a chilling wind. Jake's heart raced with dread as he imagined the kind of people who would come looking for her, those who lived on the other side of privilege. Lily's family was a force, their years of influence weighed heavily in the air, crashing into the fragile happiness he'd just allowed himself to feel. Jake's resolve simmered within him, contemplating a confrontation. How could he protect Ben when the world seemed poised to tear apart what little happiness they had? He felt the anticipation of something dire on the horizon, ready to change everything. By standing his ground, would he risk losing Ben's trust? Would he shatter the singular joyous connection his son had forged with Lily? Caught amidst swirling doubts, Jake braced himself for the storm, questioning the very foundation of the loyalty and resilience he'd instilled in Ben. As the shadows of consequences began to close in, could he really maintain this fragile balance without sacrificing everything he had built? The certainty of what lay ahead gripped him harder, forcing his heart into a frenetic dance as he prepared to face the inevitable storm brewing just outside his door. Jake's thoughts churned as he clenched his fists, grappling with the looming uncertainty. The garage, once a bastion of solitude, transformed into a battleground of conflicting emotions. He felt overshadowed by anxiety, the weight of responsibility pressing down with every tick of the clock. How could he shield Ben from the dangers awaiting them while still allowing him to embrace the joy that Lily ignited? He closed his eyes, imagining a conversation with Ben, a chance to gauge the depth of his feelings. But would Ben understand the risks involved? The last thing Jake wanted was to crush his son's newfound spirit. It would be easier to turn away, to ignore the pang of impending doom circling them. But Jake knew himself better than that. He was built on confrontation and truth, not silence or avoidance. That evening, he found Ben sprawled across the worn couch, headphones on and sketchpad flung open, lost in the world where paint and creativity merged seamlessly. Jake cleared his throat, preparing the words he would say, but as he watched his son, his heart softened. The scene encapsulated everything Jake longed for: a carefree, artistic expression unburdened by pressure. "Hey, Ben. Can we talk?" Ben pulled the headphones down, revealing wide, questioning eyes. "About what?" Lily's name hovered in the air like a delicate glass ornament, both beautiful and fragile. Jake hesitated, the words brittle on his tongue. Would talking about her only serve to motivate more connection, or would his concern snuff out the spark? I want to know how you feel about having her around." Ben's brows furrowed, confusion creeping into his features. "She's incredible, Dad. She sees things differently, you know. I haven't had anyone push me like this. It's refreshing." Jake nodded, feeling both relief and anxiety. He appreciated Ben's enthusiasm but wondered if he saw the bigger picture. "I know she's been a good influence, but we have to be cautious. I don't want her past to pull you into something dangerous." "What do you mean?" Ben's voice carried a hint of defensiveness that unsettled Jake. Thinking of Lily's privilege, her family's reach, Jake approached the issue with care. "A lot of people are looking for her. They might come around here, and that could put you at risk." Ben shifted, his tone growing assertive. "You're just worried, Dad. Why would they come here? She's not a criminal." "No, but they may not care. All they see is a runaway." Jake held Ben's gaze, wrestling with the doubts creeping in. "And they would go to whatever lengths necessary. I don't want you caught in the crossfire." "Dad, you're being dramatic," Ben retorted, an edge in his voice. "Why can't you just trust me? I can handle it." The push and pull of their conversation left Jake reeling. Trust. Was it the challenge he needed to work through his own fears of inadequacy? The thought settled like a stone in his stomach. If he allowed Ben to grow, should he trust his judgment? As the silence stretched between them, Jake's chest tightened. It was more than just about Lily, it was about navigating the choppy waters of fatherhood, learning when to protect and when to let go, but as shadows continued to loom over him, he couldn't shake the feeling that the tests of trust were just beginning. Would he allow himself to embrace uncertainty for the sake of his son's happiness? Just then, the atmosphere changed. A distant car engine roared in the driveway, loud and unyielding as if announcing the arrival of fate itself. Jake's heart raced, dread surfacing. What if this was at the moment he had dreaded? He turned to Ben, feeling a surge of determination shaping his next steps. The world threatened to unravel, but Jake's focus sharpened. They needed a strategy, a plan to confront whatever chaos followed, that he couldn't back down now. The time had come to face beyond just the turbulence of his son's life, but the storm swirling around them. Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for what waited beyond the garage door. The only question now was, were they ready to brave it together? Jake's heart thudded against his ribcage as he steeled himself. Every instinct told him to hide, to draw back into the sanctuary of the garage. But Ben's wide eyes, still glistening with youthful fervor, drew him forward. This was at a moment steeped in uncertainty but ripe with an opportunity for growth. The engine noise faded, replaced by the shuffle of footsteps on gravel. Each step felt like a countdown in Jake's mind. He inhaled deeply, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. He had always defined himself as a protector, but now, fear of the unknown threatened to erode the very foundation of his purpose as a father. "Ben," he began, deliberately lowering his voice to diffuse the tension, "it might be time we consider what happens next. If Lily's people are indeed looking for her, we have to be prepared." The reality of his words felt more concrete now, barely masked by parental instinct. Ben nodded, his excitement bubbling beneath the surface. "What should we do? I don't want her to think we're afraid." Jake paced slightly, ruler-like in his assessment of the potential dangers lurking just outside their door. "We need to formulate a plan. If she returns, we need to ensure her safety and yours. To his surprise, Ben grinned. You're turning into Machiavelli. The humor was a welcome respite, but Jake couldn't let the moment overstay its welcome. No jokes. Focus. If she trusts you, and clearly she does, then it's critical to bolster communication. You need to know where she's going, who else might be involved, and if there's anything concerning happening around her. The laughter faded from Ben's eyes, replaced by a gravity that mirrored Jake's own. I get it. But it's also about keeping her spirit alive, right? His youthful confidence shone through the doubt. I don't want to push her away. This was the crux, Jake realized, balancing protection with freedom. I can't dictate her feelings, and neither can you. What we can do is be aware, open, and honest. In that moment, the challenge of parenting unfurled like an uncharted map before them, and Jake was both the compass and the navigator. As he spoke, he felt a peculiar clarity wash over him. Not only was he shaping Ben's approach to trust and safety, but he was also navigating his own insecurities about fatherhood. He began to see how this journey with Ben would mean growing alongside him, each of them supporting the other in their respective battles. Okay, I'll talk to her, Ben said, determination igniting his gaze. I'll find out what's going on. Be careful about assumptions, Jake cautioned, chuckling to himself. His son's initiative was admirable, but uncharted waters could lead to unexpected currents. Now is not the time to be reckless. Just as Jake began to feel a sense of control, the figure of a woman appeared at the edge of the garage. Her silhouette defined against the setting sun, she held the promise of hope. Dust motes filled the still air, revealing shadows around Lily. Jake's pulse quickened, and he caught himself holding his breath. The plan they had constructed now stared at them, encapsulated in human form. But it was more than just her, it was the potential danger, the possibility of their world shifting once again. Dad? Ben whispered, uncertainty creeping back into his voice. Jake looked at his son and then back toward the approaching figure. They had reached a precipice again, a point where decisions would define the unfolding narrative. Whatever happens next, Jake murmured, we must stay together. And as the words left his lips, he understood the weight of the commitment. Trust was both fragile and strong, and at that moment, uncertainty faded into shared resolve. But as Lily stepped closer, an undeniable tension stilled the air. What revelation or danger awaited them from this unexpected encounter? Jake's heart raced as Lily approached, her features silhouetted against the fading light, uncertainty etched on both her face and their future. He had long debated how he would respond if she showed up, but the reality conflicted with his rehearsed scenarios. Lily. Ben called out, his voice betraying his eagerness as he stepped forward, but Jake's hand gently gripped his shoulder. The impulse to run was replaced by the instinct to protect, a sharp reminder that their carefully constructed plan now teetered on the edge of confrontation. Is it really you? Lily's voice quivered, half a question, half an affirmation for herself. Jake could see the storm of emotions swirling within her: fear, doubt, and the slightest glimmer of hope. The air between them pulsated with unspoken words, a tangle of worries that only deepened his sense of urgency. That's her, Dad, Ben insisted, tugging lightly. Jake released his grip, understanding that this moment was equally significant for Ben. He wanted to foster that blossoming connection, even while the trepidation gnawed at him. Lily, what happened? Jake's protective instinct surged, overpowering the instinct to keep quiet. There was a veil between them, thick with mystery, and he needed to pierce it. You can't just come back like this without an explanation. We've been worried sick. She stopped, her posture faltering under the weight of his words. I know, Jake. I had to figure some things out. I needed space. Jake swallowed, replaying those words in his mind. Space? Or was it to escape things you knew were wrong? The confrontation came out harsher than he intended, but any softness felt misplaced against the backdrop of his anxiety. Lily flinched but met his gaze firmly, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. It was necessary for me to necessary. Jake interrupted, impatience boiling under the surface. You vanished without a word. Do you realize the risk you put everyone in? A wave of guilt washed over him instantly, as her chestnut hair danced in the evening breeze, catching the twilight. There was a bottomless depth behind her eyes that drew him in, urging him to remember that her actions were driven by something deeper than mere rebellion. Ben stood frozen between them, a silent witness to the swirling tension. Lily, he pleaded, we just want to know you're okay. At that, Jake's protective barriers wavered. Ben's earnestness reminded him that their collective strength lay in communication, not accusation. He realized he needed to set a different tone. Look, you've clearly been through a lot, he said, softening his approach. We need to talk about this as a family. Will you let us help? Lily hesitated, her brow furrowing, but the moment stretched too long. Jake could see her battling her inner turmoil. It was the first time he recognized her vulnerability, a flicker of uncertainty that reminded him she was not unlike himself in this maze of confusion. Why should I let you in? She finally asked, voice trembling as both courage and desperation battled within her. Because that's what families do, Ben interjected confidently, his eyes sincere. We stand together. Even when it's messy. Each word from Ben resonated with profound honesty, cutting through the tension. Jake's heart swelled with pride and admiration. His son was learning to navigate complexities, to articulate fundamentally human truths. Remember what we talked about? Jake said, nudging Ben subtly. Awareness, openness, honesty. That applies to you too, Lily. As the hushed silence reigned momentarily, Jake felt a shift brewing with the potential to resonate within all of them, a tentative understanding mixed with the anticipation that something monumental was on the cusp of unfolding. Lily took a deep breath, her brow unfurrowing slightly. Fine, she said, but if you're going to help me, you have to commit to understanding my world too. The challenge hung in the air, an invitation into the depths of her reality, hinting at complexities they were only beginning to grasp. Jake felt a rush of determination. The opportunity for growth was palpable. Facing Lily could unveil parts of them that had remained hidden, both individually and collectively. It was a chance to confront their shared fears, and delve deeper into responsibilities they had yet to acknowledge. But even as they stood together in this pivotal moment, Jake was painfully aware that the path ahead was uncharted and fraught with potential peril. Let's start from the beginning then, he suggested, sensing the gravity of this exchange. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, a sense of solemn clarity filled the space between them, creating an unspoken agreement. Every step would be twisted, every emotion raw, leading into the profound exploration they all feared yet desired. But as the conversation began, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that lurking shadows were still out there, waiting to pounce as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth of truth. Would the revelation draw them closer or tear them apart further? Jake took a step back, the enormity of their situation crashing in like waves against a rocky shore. The tension felt palpable, wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket. He could sense that this discussion had the potential to strip away layers they had all carefully built around themselves. Okay, Lily, if we're starting from the beginning, he said, forcing his voice to remain steady, let's talk about what's been happening. No more hiding or running away. We need the truth. Lily hesitated again, as if weighing her words against the gravity of the moment. Jake could see the flicker of regret in her eyes, but also a fiery resolve that had been absent in their previous conversations. This was different, it both scared him and intrigued him. I got involved in something deep and complicated, she finally confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I could handle it alone, that I could rise above it all. A slight shudder went through her as she spoke, and Jake's heart sank with the realization that complicated didn't even begin to describe whatever ordeal she was entangled in. What do you mean by complicated? Ben interjected, not wanting to let the moment slip away but also clearly displaying his brotherly concern. Lily flinched at Ben's question but continued. I got involved with some people who, they weren't good influences. I saw what I wanted to see, but it spiraled out of control. I didn't know how to get out. Jake's mind raced. A million thoughts swirled, instinctively protecting his family, his son. Had she been in danger? Had she risked everything for fleeting excitement? The combination of anger and worry clawed at him. "Lily, you should have come to us. We could have helped you through this," Jake said, his voice tinged with frustration and concern. The protective father in him felt compelled to shield her from the full brunt of her poor choices. "But you wouldn't understand," she replied briskly, the defiance in her tone rising. "You think family means understanding everything, but it's not that simple. At times, I felt so alone even in a crowd." Jake glanced at Ben, his son's wide eyes reflecting a mixture of empathy and confusion. Would their world ever feel safe again? Would this unravel all the progress they had made together? "Look, I may not fully understand your situation, and maybe I don't have all the right words," Jake admitted, his heartbeat pounding in his ears, "but I do know this running away doesn't solve anything. It just pushes everything deeper." Lily remained silent, her gaze flickering between him and Ben, as if weighing their sincerity. The air thickened again, drenched in a shared apprehension and desire for transparency. "Life is complex," Ben offered quietly after a moment, his voice surprisingly steady. "But it doesn't mean we can't make it better together, right?" Jake watched Lily as she processed their words, overwhelmed. Beneath the surface, he could see the gears turning in her mind. The invisible threads of connection they had previously ignored were starting to weave back into something tangible, something they could rebuild on. For the first time, Jake sensed a mutual dependency emerging, a recognition that they could not simply fall back on old definitions of family. They would have to reshape it, altogether embracing the unnatural complexities that defined them. "Maybe I can tell you more," Lily finally said, drawing the moment out like a thread slowly unfurling. "But I need you both to promise that you won't judge me. Not this time." "Lily, this isn't about judgment," Jake assured her, sensing her walls cracking, just enough to let light in. "It's about truth and honesty. It's about being transparent so we can support each other through this." Ben nodded vigorously, the innocence in his eyes shining through the moment's heaviness. Together, they formed a fragile alliance, a web of hope about to be tested. Jake's insides churned with anticipation. This was just the beginning, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was lurking beneath the surface, threatening to resurface and further complicate their fragile connection. "What if I told you it goes deeper? What if I tell you it involves more than just me?" The questions hung unspoken in the air, charged with unanticipated implications. Jake felt a shiver run down his spine. What revelations were they about to uncover? And at what cost? Jake inhaled sharply, his heart racing. The words hung heavy between them, an unsaid promise that the conversation was far from over. He studied Lily's face, torn between worry and dread. What more could lie behind her veiled admission that seemed to carry the weight of the world? "Lily, if there's more to this, we need to hear it. No secrets. That's the only way through," Jake urged, his voice firm but tinged with a hint of desperation. He felt the responsibility pressing down on him, a notion that their family could shatter at any moment under the pressure of hidden truths. "I'm not running away from you," Lily said, her tone shifting from defensive to contemplative. I thought I could navigate it myself." "So what is holding you back now?" Ben asked gently, leaning forward as if hoping to bridge the chasm that had opened up. His earnestness painted a picture of understanding, and Jake admired his son's courage. "They're not just random people," she mumbled, head downcast. "They are connected to my family's past situations we tried to bury. In getting involved, I uncovered things that should be stayed hidden. Now I can't unsee them." The revelation dripped with implication, and Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. The air felt thicker, charged with an uncomfortable mix of betrayal and familial loyalty. The past had a way of clawing back into the present, and now it threatened to uproot everything he had worked tirelessly to build. "Say what you need to say, Lily. I promise we won't judge you." Jake's voice enveloped her like a blanket, warm but firm, offering support amidst the chaos. Lily took a deep breath, as if summoning the courage that lay dormant within. "I met someone who is part of that world," she admitted, her voice nearly trembling. "A different life, a different set of rules. I thought I could play the game, prove my worth beyond the last name I carry. But the deeper I went, the more tangled I became." Jake's brow furrowed as realizations began to sharpen. The enemy was not merely external, it was interwoven with everything in Lily's life. He felt the dread of familial loyalty versus the desire for independence surfacing, building unresolved tension. "What kind of game?" Ben interjected, not fully grasping the stakes yet. "It's complicated," she replied again, frustration clear in her tone. "Money, favors, loyalty is a currency. I didn't want to admit it, but I used them to feel powerful, to escape the expectations of being just the heiress. It's all become overwhelming." Jake felt his protective instincts kick in, not just for himself but for Lily and Ben as well. This was more than a mere sibling quarrel, it threatened to expose vulnerabilities that ran far deeper. "Look, we all have our demons, our battles. But we don't have to walk this path alone," he pressed. "You reaching out now is a step in the right direction." He noticed a flicker of something in her eyes, hope battling with regret. Jake would not allow her to slip away again, not into the shadows of her choices. "But you'll have to face the music eventually," he added cautiously. "This involvement doesn't just affect you, it will rip through the fabric of our family if we don't approach it together." Suddenly, Lily's face hardened, a mask of defiance taking shape. "You think I'm afraid of facing anything? I just don't want to drag you down with me. If this goes public, if they find out." Jake's heart sank at the insinuation. Would they be exposed? He had fought all his life to build a sanctum for his family, a bastion against the chaos of the world. Now, it felt as if it could collapse in an instant. "Then let's get ahead of it, together," he said, determination igniting in him. "We can plan this out. You have to let us in." But Lily's eyes remained clouded, battling inner turmoil as Jake's words echoed eerily through his mind. This was not just about healing, this was about confronting a storm that loomed large on the horizon. "Lily, you need to decide where you stand. Are you ready to take action, or will you keep hiding?" The question pulsated in the silence. Punctuated by the tenuous threads of their connection. As she looked between them, Jake couldn't shake the unease creeping up his spine. Would she choose to shield herself or step into the light, however uncomfortable it might be? And then she opened her mouth, poised to finally share what strung them all together, a hidden figure from the past that had the power to unravel everything they built. Lily's breath hitched in her throat as she contemplated the weight of her next words. The fire in Jake's eyes beckoned her, yet the shadows of her past loomed ever larger, threatening to consume her. For a fleeting moment, she felt trapped in a world of her own making, a labyrinth with no clear escape. How could she untangle this mess without pulling her family into the chaos? "His name is Ethan. Ethan Beresford," she finally managed to say, her voice a whisper against the thick air. "He is connected to our family. I didn't know it at first, but my father had dealings with his family. They're not just names in a ledger, they wield influence, and it's dangerous." Jake's expression twisted into a mix of alarm and concern. The implications rattled around in his mind as he pieced together the puzzle. This wasn't just a rebellious infatuation, this was a connection with someone entrenched in a legacy riddled with risks that could jeopardize all they had fought to create. "Why didn't you come to us sooner?" Ben asked, his youthful face scrunched in worry. The innocence of his tone made the confrontation even more poignant. Lily shifted, unable to meet their gazes. "I thought I could handle it alone. I didn't want you to think I was reckless or weak. I wanted to prove I could stand on my own 2 feet. But this is not just about you," Jake interjected, his tone sharp. "The weight of your decisions carries consequences that can shake our entire family." With each heartbeat, the hold that fear had on Lily began to loosen. Jake's protective instincts were good, but she needed him to see that she was more than just an heiress. She had agency, grit, and was fighting to define her own identity. "Do you really think I would want to bring this chaos to our doorstep?" She fired back, her cheeks flush with a mix of anger and shame. "I've been trying to figure out where I fit into this puzzle, to not just be the heiress but someone with a voice. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could find power in those connections instead of being just a pawn." Jake recognized the desperation in her voice. She had chosen to flirt with danger, to dance on the edge of a precipice in search of validation, but that validation could easily morph into manipulation. "Lily, you've played a dangerous game. Control can easily slip away in worlds like that. You need a plan, an honest one," he said, the tension in his voice trembling with urgency. "Plan? To do what?" she demanded fiercely, her demeanor shifting from vulnerable to defiant. "To distill my worth into a family plan that fits within your definition of safety." The defiance startled Jake. While her words stung, they also stirred something within him. Wasn't she right? The fight for her identity was every bit as important as their family's reputation. Her resilience tapped into his own struggles. He too had long wrestled with the shadows of who he was expected to be. "Your worth is never in jeopardy, Lily," he said, the softness in his voice contrasting with the previous tension. "But it's crucial for you to understand the risks of this world. We need to confront the truth together." A moment of silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of new understanding. It was a budding realization for both of them. Her journey towards self-discovery didn't need to be at the cost of the family. "Okay," she said at last, a quiver in her voice. "But if we're doing this, it has to be on my terms. I want to take the lead. I can't stand by any longer." Jake felt a swell of pride but also a pang of fear. He understood the road ahead would be fraught with obstacles. They would need to bind together in ways they hadn't prepared for. "Then let us build a strategy. We'll uncover what needs to be known and confront it together," he replied, his determination rallying. Just then, a chill swept through the room as the familiar ringtone broke the tension. Ben's phone buzzed on the table. They all paused, glancing at it, and then at each other. "Who is it?" Lily asked, her earlier bravado wavering. Ben lifted his phone, his face paling as he read the name on the screen. "It's Ethan," he said, eyes wide. In that moment, the air grew heavy again with a new dread. This was the moment where everything they discussed could unravel, where danger could step into their sanctuary. Jake's heart raced. The time had come to face the very truth that had been lurking in the shadows. Would they take control, or would they let the past define their future? Lily felt a rush of adrenaline as Ben's words lingered in the air, a heavy silence weighing down every breath. Her heart was pounding, not just from the sudden dread of Ethan's call but from the realization that she was teetering on the brink of something monumental, a confrontation that could alter the trajectory of everything she had been building. "What do we do?" Ben's voice shattered the stillness. His youthful uncertainty reflected Lily's own inner turmoil. She remembered a time when the weight of such decisions felt like a fortress she couldn't penetrate. Now, she was ready to break through that wall. Jake's gaze was steady, a calm contrast to her rising panic. "Lily, listen to me. If you want to take the lead, now is your chance. Don't shy away from it. If we're going to face Ethan, we have to do it strategically." The urgency in his tone ignited a flicker of resolve in her. She realized that being proactive didn't just mean confronting a difficult call, it meant stepping into her own narrative, not waiting for the consequences to dictate her actions. "Okay, let us think this through." She paced the room, mind racing through possibilities. If Ethan is reaching out now, it could mean several things. He might want to renegotiate terms, or he could be drawing us into the fold of their web. Either way, I need to respond. "Do you trust him?" Jake challenged, leaning forward, his intensity unwavering. The question hung heavy in the air. Trust had always been a fleeting concept for her, especially regarding family connections that lingered in shadows. "I don't know. I want to, but I can't ignore the implications of his family, she admitted, wrestling with her own conflicting feelings. Her voice steadied, fueled by a growing determination. I need to find out what he really wants. Ben looked between them, concern etched on his features. Are you sure this is safe? What if he's not being honest? Lily took a breath, absorbing the weight of her brother's words. She wasn't just battling an external threat, she was grappling with her own history of trust and betrayal. I can't let fear dictate my moves anymore. It's time to embrace the uncertainty. Maybe I'll discover something empowering. She grabbed her phone, resolute. I'll handle this call. But I want you guys in my corner. Let us prepare a list of questions, objectives. We can control this narrative. As she dialed, her heart raced, thumping against her chest like wild drums. Each ring felt like a countdown to a revelation, stretching the moment impossibly thin. When the call connected, she steadied her voice. Ethan, she began, anchoring herself in her newfound resolve. I know you've been trying to reach me. We need to talk about everything, what this means for both of us. His voice came through with that familiar charm that had once disarmed her. Lily, I'm glad you picked up. There's a lot to discuss, and I believe it concerns both our families. With each word he spoke, Lily navigated the intricate landscape of her emotions. This was no longer about him being a dangerous link to her past, it was an opportunity for her to reclaim her agency, to steer the conversation where she needed it to go. Let us meet, she said, refusing to let hesitation creep into her decision. We can dive deeper into this. But understand, I want to be dictated to. I'm setting the terms. As the call ended, a mixture of dread and exhilaration washed over her. She had chosen to confront the darkness and seek clarity in the murky waters of her past. Ben looked at her, his brow furrowed but admiration glimmering in his eyes. That was bold. I didn't expect you to come out swinging like that. I didn't either, she admitted, heart pounding. But it's time I break free from this uncertainty, to reclaim the narrative. I've wasted too long being defined by others. This is my story, and it's time to write it. Jake nodded, a newfound respect sparkling in his gaze. We're here for you. Just remember, the road ahead will be anything but simple. Lily smiled, a fire ignited within her. I'm ready. And I'm not backing down. But just as they started strategizing their next move, Lily's phone buzzed again. Another message flashed on the screen, an unknown number this time, and dread filled the air once more. It's not over yet, she whispered, the weight of impending decisions pressing in around her. What line would she be forced to cross next? Could she truly navigate the treacherous waters ahead? The room buzzed with unspoken tension, Lily's pulse still racing from her earlier conversation with Ethan. The chilling unknown behind the unknown number flashed on her screen, drawing her attention. It felt like a spark in a dark room, both alarming and illuminating. Who is it? Ben asked, peering at the screen from his vantage point on the couch. A number I don't recognize, Lily replied, furrowing her brows. This was no ordinary message. It potentially held keys to her future, and she was determined to decode it. With a deep breath, she clicked to read the content. The message was simple but chilling: we need to meet. There's more at stake than you realize. Ethan isn't telling you everything. Lily's mind flickered through the implications. Who sent this? Was it a veiled threat? Or an attempt to expose truths she hadn't yet grasped? Do you think it's a trap? Jake interjected, sensing her internal conflict. Maybe, she replied, chewing the inside of her cheek. But then again, maybe it was precisely the nudge she required to take the next step. The risk ignited something within her. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she was evolving. Then let us figure out who it is before we make any decisions, Ben suggested, his youthful earnestness contrasting with the way the stakes had mysteriously surged. No, Lily said, surprising herself with the steely firmness in her voice. I need to embrace this. If I let paranoia dictate my actions, I'll just be a pawn in someone else's game. Jake nodded, intrigued by her transformation. All right, but we should prepare when you decide to respond. Create a plan. The prospect of organizing her thoughts gave Lily clarity. The old her would have felt lost, paralyzed by indecision. The new her, the one ignited by Jake's trust and buoyed by Ben's faith, was ready to confront not just Ethan but the shadows of her past. Lily moved to her laptop, fingers dancing over the keys as she initiated a plan. She opened a blank document, subtitled Next Steps. Because this wasn't merely about a message, it was about defining her fate. As the ideas flowed, she delineated her questions for Ethan, clarifying objectives, and looked over her shoulder at Ben and Jake. Let us evaluate our resources. Who do we know that might have information about Ethan's family? We need every angle covered. Ben leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. I can reach out to some contacts from the private investigation team we hired when everything went down. Good. And I'll dive into social media to see if we can glean any details on his associates, Jake added, his excitement palpable. This sense of teamwork fortified Lily's resolve. They weren't just her family. They were allies in this transformative journey. She felt a surge of pride as she wrote, the document swelling with possibilities, each line fortifying her intention to take back control. Then, the phone buzzed again. But before she could check it, Ben exclaimed, "Wait. Remember, whoever sent that message might be tracking you. We should be cautious about how we proceed." Lily felt a flutter of doubt creep in, but she wrestled with it fiercely. The stakes had risen, and she could either submit to fear or vigilantly weave through the threats. "You're right," she admitted. "But I won't let the unknown render me static. I need to put myself in the position of strength, deciding when and how I engage with this." As they began drafting responses and assessing the risk, a new determination anchored itself within her. This brief phase of indecision had transformed into a call to action. The unknown didn't intimidate her, it dared her to blaze through uncertainty with the incandescent fire of new purpose. But as they wrapped their strategy discussion, a shadow of unrest passed through the room again. "Lily, that message, it's possible the sender isn't working alone," Jake said, the seriousness of his tone sinking in. "What if there are more layers to this situation than we anticipated? Could she be stepping into a larger conspiracy? A network so tangled that even she couldn't discern the end?" The thought twisted in her gut, the anxiety sharp yet exciting. She felt as if she were standing on a precipice. There was no turning back now, the momentum she created demanded her attention, and a volatile thrill coursed through her veins. "Then we prepare for whatever comes next," she responded, voice a firm mix of uncertainty and courage, "because no matter what darkness emerges from this, I will be ready to confront it head-on." As her phone alerted her to a new incoming call, she took a breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "What if it's something I can't ignore?" she muttered, swallowing hard as she reached for the device once more, ready to dive into the abyss that awaited her. Would this next call help her uncover the truth, or drag her deeper into a labyrinth of secrets? The air hung heavy with anticipation as Lily placed the call, her heart racing with the weight of her choices. The ever-present shadow of uncertainty loomed, but now it felt charged with purpose. She was no longer just reacting to the chaos surrounding her, she was stepping into her power, carving out the narrative that was entirely hers to shape. "Hello." The voice on the other end was smooth and dripping with familiarity. It sent a shiver down Lily's spine. Ethan's confidence was palpable, but it no longer had the same allure it once did. She was prepared now, armed with clarity and a newfound sense of purpose. "I got your message," she said, the steel in her voice surprising even herself. "I want to know exactly what you mean by there's more at stake than you realize." "Lily, I'm glad you're ready to engage," he said, his tone laced with mock reassurance. "There are things about our families, about the past, that you don't fully understand. I think it's time we addressed it." "Then let us meet," she declared, bolstered by the convictions that had surged within her. "But it must be on my terms." No vague reassurances, no manipulations. The truth only. The silence on the other end hummed with respect for her newfound confidence. You've grown bolder since our last encounter. I admire that. His words felt like both an acknowledgement of her journey and a challenge. As they discussed the specifics of their meeting, Lily felt a surge of agency. The pieces of the puzzle were finally beginning to fit together. It was time for her to reclaim her narrative, to confront the shadows of her past without fear. She understood the dangers. She was no longer just the heiress but a young woman determined to forge her own path. After hanging up, she shared the details with Jake and Ben, who listened intently, a supportive sanctuary enveloping her in their presence. Okay, so what's the plan for the meeting? Jake asked, eyes serious but proud. I'll make sure we have eyes and ears everywhere, Ben chimed in, energy crackling in his voice. I can gather intel on Ethan's network, anything that might give us an edge. Lily couldn't help but smile at the blossoming team spirit among them. They were moving from mere conversation to a coalition, each family member leaning into their strengths, their resolve intertwining more intricately than ever. As the meeting day approached, Lily's heart was a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation. This was more than just a confrontation, it was a final step toward an empowered identity. She readied herself to face not only Ethan but the legacy that had long defined her. She was ready to excavate the truths buried beneath layers of expectation and fear. On the day of the meeting, she donned a blazer that exuded confidence, standing before the mirror as she stared into her own eyes. This is your moment, she whispered to herself. It was a truth she had come to embrace. Arriving at the venue, a sophisticated lounge that oozed privilege and hidden agendas, she felt the weight of the environment but met it with poise. Each step she took reflected the growth she'd achieved, the self-doubts she'd shed. Ethan was already seated at a secluded booth, his demeanor a blend of charm and calculating intent. She could sense the tension bristle in the air. Lily, he drawled, offering a smile that felt less sincere than before. Ethan, she replied, sliding into the booth confidently. We need to get straight to the point. I don't have time for games. The way he studied her made her skin prickle, yet she held her ground. There's a lot I didn't know about my family, and it's time for transparency. I want everything laid out. Very well, he said, leaning back as if her directness intrigued him. But know this, the truth can be uncomfortable. I'm ready for it, she asserted, her voice unwavering. The conversation unfolded with startling revelations, a history linked by an intricate tapestry of familial ambitions and buried secrets. As Ethan unveiled the layers of connection, past rivalries, unspoken legacies, hidden expectations, Lily felt the power of understanding wash over her. The fear that used to paralyze her began to transform into fortitude. When the meeting came to a close, Lily walked away from that bar not only with answers but also a strong sense of her own agency. The shadows of her past that once threatened to ensnare her had now braided into insights that forged her identity, and for the first time, she felt whole. Jake and Ben awaited her outside, their expressions a blend of concern and pride. How did it go? Ben asked, eyes wide with eagerness. It went better than expected, Lily replied, her voice brimming with a newfound authority. I know what I have to do now. She'd succeeded where so many before her had faltered. Not only had she unearthed crucial truths, but she had also solidified her own identity in the process. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was prepared to navigate every twist and turn, standing alongside her family who had evolved with her in ways she never imagined. Together, Jake said, mirroring her renewed resolve. Whatever comes next, we face it as a unit. Lily smiled, the bonds they'd tightened feeling like a fortress against the darkness. In those moments, she understood that resilience was not just about facing obstacles, it was about leaning into connection, a truth that defined not just her journey but every one of their futures. They stepped away from the shadows of the lounge, stepping into the vibrant light of possibilities that lay ahead. Now was the time to face the world, and more importantly, to embrace her own story, a narrative she would actively craft rather than passively inherit. She had conquered her fears, she had grown beyond her limitations, and that strength would guide her through the winding paths still to come. Get ready to embrace your journey. You need to subscribe now to witness more powerful transformations and emotional revelations like Lily S. Leave a like now to support these powerful narratives and fuel the algorithm so others can find their inspiration too. Comment below to share your thoughts on Lily S. journey and what it means to confront your truths. Share this video with at least 5 friends who desperately need to see this conclusion and embark on their paths of self-discovery too. Don't wait even one more second to spread the inspiration.